Hi, this is Tim, and it has been a minute since I have done a podcast. A few of you reached out because you're like, "Hey, I thought you were going to start doing these weekly," and yeah, I am supposed to be doing these weekly. And the simple answer is, it's been really busy in the training center. So I can't even think now if we're on week five, four. We're on week 4 or 5 of continuous or consecutive training weeks. Now, that's not all our intense training because then I probably would be completely zapped. I don't even know if I could do that. Actually, I doubt I could do 4 weeks straight. I would go insane or I would drive Amber insane. But we've been doing a lot of custom guest trainings. And so in between those weeks, so yeah, we did a one of our 5-day boot camp trainings. And then we've done, I can't remember, I won't remember the exact order. We've done IO Link training, we've done sensor training. We had guests come in and do TIA portal training. And yeah, in between that and running our regular classes and a couple of cool new trainers, that is just that pretty much all of our time. In fact, today I'm not going to be alone because yeah, I got to prep for a training week, and it will be a full class this week. But yeah, a couple things that have been going on is we finalized the pneumatic trainer, and I think it's turned out better than I ever expected it to be. I was really thinking, we have a lot of people that want to do a little bit of action. I'm like, well, we could learn a little pneumatics, we could add an electric actuator, pick a part up, move it around, and it does that. It does that really well. But I didn't think about the fact that you can learn just a ton about different machine sequencing methods with that trainer. So we have the videos on sequencing methods where really we're working our way through lights. And if you're really got your head down and are really wanting to learn, I think it works well. But for those who are really just, okay, let me do this exercise, see it move, do this exercise, see it move, it probably doesn't hit as hard. It doesn't hit as hard as troubleshooting. So I think I'm going to rerun that whole sequencing video series on the pneumatic trainer. I think it is that good and it's worthwhile to do. So I have that going. We have a new pick and place robot trainer, and it is 98% of the way there. We're working on, we had some just raw steel for our parts and we're getting them powder coated different colors and we can talk about it, but that one is ready to go now. So we're gonna have videos coming out on both of those soon. We also have a live stream course on Studio 5000 that I need to get back on. So hopefully you'll see me soon on that. Of course, we're in the busy season right now. It's always hard because we've also got I was at Florida Automation Expo. I don't think I've talked to y'all since there. There was one day I was like, there was something else in all those weeks. We did, oh yeah, because we did kinetics training, we did PID training, and I went to the Florida Automation Expo, which was an excellent regional show. So it's been busy, but hopefully you'll start seeing me more. Hopefully we'll get on the live streams. So, get back on those. Probably not weekly, but I'd like to get back to every other week hitting a live stream to answer questions. But speaking of questions, I just wanted to answer a few that came in. First, Tim, I'm seeing IO-Link pop up everywhere now. How much are they actually being used on the factory floor? Is it just a fancy predictive maintenance tool, or is it solving real day to day headaches? And wow, is that a loaded, excellent question that I plan on addressing in that pneumatic series. Right now, I think IO Link is being used for about a tenth of its capability. The big thing that people are using it for right now is ease of wiring. So you can grab an IO Link hub. An IO Link hub pretty much can take a bunch of discrete sensors and put it on one IO Link port. So you're seeing people take a 16 port IO Link hub and consolidate a bunch of sensors and run one IO Link cable back to, or one cable back to their IO Link master. We're seeing a lot of that. What we're not seeing that really is the benefit from a longevity standpoint that we should be doing is using some of its backup and restore features. So yeah, okay, discrete sensors, that's cool. Ion Link Hub, that's cool. That's great applications for it. But then you have a laser sensor and you need it to switch at 300 millimeters. Well, instead of us going and programming that every time, we can have that all configured in the sensor. That way, if you plug it into the correct port, it will download the configuration of that sensor when you're replacing it. So that's one key thing I think we're not using well at all. The other one is, let's take a photoelectric or capacitive sensor. Usually they have an adjuster on them that you adjust where you want them to switch at. And that's all and great. And we could even program that switching point into IO Link. But instead of doing that, looking at the actual value, and okay, and I'm going to throw numbers out there, but let's say 12 millimeters we know is where it should be switching. So if we see something at 16, it's definitely not it. We can ignore that. But also, what if you see something at 4 millimeters? Because the most common issue we have with sensors is the head getting knocked off of them. There's somebody having a problem. They think it's the sensor, so they adjust the sensor out to get it closer to the material. Or what if a bearing is going bad and that starts dipping down? So we should be seeing it 12 millimeter, 12 millimeter, 12 millimeter. And all of a sudden we start dipping and we're showing at 11 millimeter and then 10 millimeter. That tells us for some reason we're getting closer to that material. And that could easily be an alarm to say, hey, go check that sensing distance. Check out that bearing. So that's one thing I see. There's another thing I see is a lot of them have short circuit protection. They have overcurrent protection, which is great, great protection, but they alarm off of it. And we're not mapping that alarm data in. Another one is, basic frequency counting. A lot, yes, we can get on, we can get off, we can do our logic based off of it. But maybe it's turning the solenoid on. Well, a lot of them you can configure to count how often that's happened. Well, there we've got our data now sitting in that device of how often that solenoid cycled, and we know it's good for X amount of cycles. As it's getting close to it, and we might need to start making some decisions based on that. So I do believe IO-Link has tremendous potential, but I don't think we're using it well. And so yeah, I'm gonna have a short series on IO-Link. We'll use our trainer that has the laser sensor, the inductive procs, which is discrete. That way we can understand how to hook a discrete item up to an IO link block, and has a capacitive IO link sensor, and it has the encoder. And that's one thing I'm really going to push on it is the diagnostics that we could get and how we could work out a lot of things and save us some time. Let's see. Oh, we got another IO link one here. I watched your recent video on network troubleshooting, but I'm still having issues getting IO link devices to play nice with my PLC. When you were teaching this, what is the most common mistake you see students making that are actually preventing data from flowing? I just did it in in the I just recorded videos on adding IO link, and sure enough, I when you add a generic module, I was doing the generic module in it. When you open up the generic module creation in Studio 5000, it defaults to a double integer. And most of your IO link is integers. Double integer is 32-bit, an integer is 16-bit. And so then we enter in our assembly instances, and maybe it's a size of 30. Well, if you do a size of 30 as a double integer, that's telling it a size of 60, and it doesn't have that data available. And then on top of that, it's the one item you cannot change. Even if you go offline, you cannot change that size later. It's the one thing you've got to get right. And that's probably the big one I see. But still, we're going to hit the basics. You add the IO link module, go look down in we'll first look for the IO OK at the top right. As it changes ours, will say IO not responding, and your green light's going to be flashing. Then go down in your IO configuration and find that microscopic little yellow triangle. Right click it and go to connection. And that's going to tell you where the issue's at. I want to be more versatile, but I feel stuck on a brand I've always used. After running your recent TIE portal training, how should I approach learning a new platform without feeling like I'm starting from scratch? Well, and yeah, I'm gonna say this next statement without, without any other background besides that, statement. What I would say first is how in depth do you know that platform that you feel you're stuck on? Now, it could be that now there's 2 ways that can go. What I find a lot of people really don't know the software in depth, whether it be Studio 5000, TI Portal. I'd line these up both the same. They know what they're calling an examine closed or in Siemens a normally open, or what they're calling examine open, or in Siemens what they're calling a normally closed. But they have no idea what that really means or what that really does. And I have my method for it. I'm not going to say my method's the best, but I bet you money if you use my method, then becomes really clear. But moving on, they don't know. They know a TON they can use to delay something happening. But do you really know when the TT is a one, when the done is a one, when the EN is a one? And do you really know those items? Do you understand what a false TON does? I ask that question all the time. Almost everybody says does nothing. Well, if it does nothing, how did all those values of zero get in there? So knowing those items really deeply inside and out in the brand you feel like you're stuck in will probably lead you to be better at the other brand. Because if you really understand the logic part, you really understand that there's only a few variations, and I am it's a series I really want to build out. Is TI Portal? I don't even want to use the word versus. What do you? I don't know the word even, but lining them up, TI Portal and Studio 5000, and showing that okay, besides a little bit of lingo, if you know one of them in depth, then you probably can catch on the other one in depth if you can get connected to them. And that's the challenge, always getting connected. And but then we only have one learning curve and we can get through any program. Now, the only other catch to that statement is a lot of us using what I'm going to call more of the programmable relay and feeling stuck in it. And this does include many bigger brands of PLC manufacturers is they think, well, I'm learning this, but it only does the basic instructions, some timers, and it might have a math instruction. It doesn't get in the weeds of Ethernet IP or Profinet or being able to communicate with IO link. In those cases, it's because you don't have a real PLC. So there's my two takes on that. Is still choose one, go deep. But when I say go deep, I mean you should know 95% of the instructions, not just what the acronym means. Like in depth, you should know what they're doing. And if you do that, then you have enough knowledge that all you got to do is relate. Oh, they call this a one shot over here, and they call it a pulse over here. But I know what that means, so I can distinguish both of them. And then finally, we have my manager is all over me about downtime and it's stressing me out. What is the one physical thing I can do to stop this cycle without buying a bunch of new equipment? Well, that is a great question. And we actually have a course out now on that, but it's more for your manager because I think what you just said, you said, the conflict in your sentence there. You said, what is the one physical thing I can actually do to stop this cycle without buying a bunch of equipment? How much does downtime cost? And this is more for your manager. Now, don't go to your manager like I'm coming to you right now. We have some things to help you ease the manager into this, but they're all about they're all at you about downtime because they're losing money. And okay, let's just use $1,000 an hour for a nice round downtime figure. And trust me, your downtime is probably if you're average in U.S. manufacturing, your downtime's way more than $1,000 an hour. But okay, you can you can go to our training if you just manage to reduce your current downtime by 4 hours. So if over 6 months coming to our training reduces your downtime by 4 hours, you paid for the training. Everything else is icing on the cake. You need hardware. You 100% need hardware right now. You need a PLC. You need whatever drive you're normally working with. You need a motor that it's connected to. You need the IO block that you're using. You need all that equipment in a safe sandbox environment. That way you can practice and learn how to reduce that downtime. And okay, let's just go for $10,000 in hardware. You can probably equip yourself with a good trainer for $10,000 of hardware. In our imaginary $1,000 hour scenario, you only have to reduce that production downtime by 10 hours to pay for that, and you will do that easily. That's yeah. I mean, first of all, probably, and again, we're working on some videos to deliver this for your manager. Don't you go to your manager and be like, "Hey, you need to check this out right here." But realistically, you're in fact, yeah, let's just pop that up just so we can talk about it. If we go to twcontrols.com and we're going to go to the guides area up here. And then mainly right now you do need probably this area right here to learn how to program your particular PLC. But right here, I want to advance my skills. This career path roadmap, this is probably for you, but also for your manager right here. We have the workforce readiness guide. And I know a lot of you are watching some podcasts, so I will try to talk it out all the way through, but it's in the right hand column. And we're going to view the manager's guide. And this gives some really good information. And it's a 3-step process. First of all, we're going to quantify our data. How much does our downtime cost? And you'll be surprised the times I talk to companies that they don't even know how much this is. And then we're going to justify. And this is probably where you and your manager need to sit out right now is building a business case. And I'm just going to go ahead and click on this one. If I go to building a business case, there's a nice PLC training justification calculator. And if we put $1,000 in there, that is how much lost revenue, lost hour. Your downtime is $1,000 an hour. And we're just going to say that you make $25 an hour. And then in that first section, we really talk about the reactive multiplier. And this is the key. For the most part, if we can just get your decision matrix to the point that instead of you constantly being reactive and trying to find the problem with the machine to you being able to plan and shut down the machine instead of it just going down and everybody staring at you. When that machine goes down unplanned, there's about a 3.5 multiplier on the expenses. So instead of it being $1,000 on a planned downtime, it's three and a half, or not 3,500. It's 3,500. Yeah, $3,500 on an unplanned downtime. So I'm gonna hit this calculate break even hours for just coming to our training. In your situation, if that is so, you would need to reduce your downtime per year by 1.2 hours. And that is really what we are talking about here. And after that, there is a need corporate approval. There is a worksheet right here that you can fill out. And I mean, there is no one on the planet that can do, if you can do basic math, you can justify most of the training that you need. And yeah, but the first thing in your sentence is you're saying without buying a lot of parts. No, you severely need parts right now. That's where you're at right now. But yeah, I will put a link to actually I'll put a link to the workforce readiness for managers. It's twcontrols.com/workforce readiness 4 managers in the description. And this is an easy 1, 2, 3 step process to justifying our training and the equipment that we need to reduce our downtime. And this is easy math to add to company profitability. Well, I got to get down to the training center and prep for the week, but you all have a great week.